Russia's battlefield woes won't stop coming. President Vladimir Putin's faltering invasion has already taken nearly 3.5 years longer than he anticipated, and it shows no signs of slowing down. If anything, things are getting worse for Russia for a simple reason. Ukraine is dropping the hammer. Specifically, the AASM HAMMER, which is a French glide bomb that is devastating Russia's forces inside Ukraine. These French hammer bombs are killing Russian commanders with brutal efficiency, and it doesn't look like there's much that Putin can do about it. The story begins in Bakhmut, where Euromaidan press reports that Ukraine used the AASM HAMMER with such efficiency that it was able to strike the exact location of a command post of Russia's 3rd Army Corps. That location was in a high-rise building, with RBC Ukraine noting that the General Staff of Ukraine confirmed the May 21st strike 2 days after it happened. This strike severely degrades the ability of the Russian Federation to plan and conduct operations in the Kursk direction, the most intense sector on the front line, said Ukraine's General Staff in a Facebook post. The building where the Russian commanders were headquartered was also severely damaged, the General Staff says. Euromaidan adds that the high-level commanders eliminated during the strike were likely in charge of Russia's assaults in the Chasiv Yar, which was slowed down considerably by Ukraine hitting the Bakhmut command post with an AASM HAMMER. And it gets worse for Russia, much worse. In Kursk, where Russia claims to have pushed Ukrainian troops out of its territory, more hammers are falling. This time, Ukraine carried out a multi-layered series of hammer strikes that started with the bombing of several buildings in Tyotkino. These buildings were key military targets. They housed several Russian drone operators who were targeting Ukrainian soldiers and may have soon played a key role in Putin's attempted summer advance into the Ukrainian oblast of Sumy. At the time of the April 19 strike, Ukraine didn't confirm which weapon it used. Euromaidan press says that it was most likely the AASM HAMMER, which hit a Tyotkino sugar factory where the Russian drone operators were based. The strike apparently killed up to 20 of Russia's drone experts in what was the last gasp attack to defend the few remaining shreds of Kursk that Ukraine held at the time. Ukraine may have been pushed out of that territory, but it made sure to use the AASM HAMMER to do as much damage as possible before it left. Continuing from that April strike, Euromaidan says Ukraine even expanded its hammer operation to strike against several Russian fortifications and strongpoints concealed within Kursk tree lines. Direct impacts were scored, strongholds were destroyed, presumably even more Russian commanders were taken out of the field. Then there's Guyevo. Also located in the Kursk Oblast, Guyevo lies on the Ruit River and is roughly 60 miles from the border Ukraine shares with Russia. That location makes it key to Putin's previously mentioned push into Sumy. Russia's leader has spent several weeks building up troops in the region to prepare for an assault against the Ukrainian Oblast. Ukraine stopped that assault in its tracks using the AASM HAMMER. Euromaidan says that Ukraine deployed some of its reconnaissance drones to monitor what was happening in Guyevo. Those drones picked up on the Russian troop movements and recorded the locations of the areas that were home to the largest concentrations of Putin's soldiers. That information was relayed to the Ukrainian Air Force and then to the pilots of fighter jets flying close to the border. Take a guess what happened next. Coordinating with a reconnaissance team, Ukraine struck hard against the concentrations of Russian troops using the AASM HAMMER fired from its fighter jets. And it wasn't done there, Euromaidan press says. Ukraine followed up with secondary strikes deeper into Kursk that took out more command post and drone operators who were preparing once again for the upcoming Sumy offensive. How could it get any worse for Putin? Simple. Ukraine's AASM HAMMER strikes are also taking place in other locations where Russia's leader wants to launch new offensives. One of those places is Zaporizhzhia, where the war zone reported that Russia was launching renewed assaults as far back as April 17. The defense forces of southern Ukraine claimed on Telegram that Russia's assault groups included several regiments of the country's 58th Combined Arms Army, involving at least 320 personnel, 40 units of armored combat vehicles, 3 tanks, and about a dozen buggies. Ukraine's southern regions are clearly on Putin's mind as much as the northeastern region of Sumy. And just as had been seen around Sumy and Bakhmut, Ukraine isn't taking these assaults lying down. Euromaidan Press says that Ukraine has launched a series of devastating strikes against Russia's forces since that renewed Zaporizhzhia offensive began. One of these strikes, which is confirmed using geolocated combat footage, destroyed several buildings out of which Russian drone operators were working. Others, as with the strikes of Guyevo, targeted concentrations of Russian soldiers that were clearly building up to launch the kinds of assaults the defense forces of southern Ukraine reported on in mid-April. Then there was a strike against another command post. Several, in fact. Lastly, they hit a series of Russian command posts, cutting the head off the snake in Russian attempts to revitalize an offensive in Zaporizhzhia, Euromaidan Press claims. The Kyiv Post has also reported on Ukraine's use of the AASM HAMMER in Zaporizhzhia, noting on June 13 that it had used the bombs, launched from a MiG-29, to take out a drone control point and ammunition depot in the region. Now, hold on a second. A MiG-29? How did Ukraine manage to fire a French-made modern bomb from a Soviet-era aerial platform? Keep watching. For now, what's happening here is strike after strike after strike, all using the AASM HAMMER and all carefully coordinated to take out as many Russian commanders and key military facilities as possible. All of this would be bad enough for Putin, but at least he could soothe himself with the thought that Ukraine won't have access to the AASM HAMMER forever. Surely, its stockpiles will run out and France will refuse to send any more because it needs the bombs for its own military. Sadly for Putin, he's dead wrong. Not only is Ukraine not going to run out of AASM hammers anytime soon, but it's going to be getting so many that Russia's forces won't be able to escape this terrifying version of a glide bomb. That's according to the Kyiv Independent, which reported on May 4th that France is gearing up to manufacture 1,200 AASM hammers annually in 2025, which is a massive increase over the 830 it made the previous year. Those bombs are going to be manufactured by Safran, with a Le Parisien article covering the same news, noting that the hammer has become the weapon of choice for Ukraine's air force thanks to its precision and the fact that it's resistant to Russia's electronic jamming techniques. More on that in a moment. As if all of that wasn't bad enough for Putin, United 24 Media points out that France has quadrupled production of the AASM hammer since Russia invaded Ukraine. By the end of 2025, it's expected to be sending around 50 of them to Ukraine per month, adding up to 600 per year. That's half of the hammer stockpiles France plans to make during the year, which means any hope Putin may have had that Ukraine would run out of the weapon is dashed. France will be sending more, a lot more, and if Ukraine needs them, France is going to have several hundred in its stockpiles that it can also send, along with the 50 per month that are already going to Ukraine. In short, Ukraine is going to be getting a lot more of a weapon that's already using to kill Russian commanders with brutal efficiency. And there are plenty of reasons why that weapon is so effective. Safran, which is the AASM hammer's manufacturer, provides the basic details. It says that hammer stands for highly agile, modular munition extended range, and that it's a smart air-to-surface weapon that's usable in all weather conditions. But here's the most important part. The AASM hammer isn't a bomb. It's a conversion kit that Ukraine can use with the many dumb bombs that it has in its arsenal. Dumb bombs are simple explosives Ukraine can drop from any aircraft that features no real form of guidance system. Instead, a plane has to fly over a target, open a hatch, drop the bomb, and hope that it lands at least somewhere close to its intended target. Dumb bombs are fine for use in peppering a wide area with multiple explosives, but for precision strikes, such as the ones Ukraine has been carrying out, they're practically useless. Precision would depend on chance rather than design to achieve a direct hit against a specific target. The AASM hammer changes all of that by offering a modular design that allows for the use of multiple forms of guidance kits on Ukraine's dumb bombs. Army Recognition offers more information, noting that there are 3 versions of this guidance kit that Ukraine can leverage. The first, the SBU-38, is the original model designed for the hammer and combined an inertial navigation system, or INS, with a GPD to create a bomb that has a circular error probable, or CEP, of about 32 feet. That's pretty accurate, though it's not super precise. The other two guidance model variations allow Ukraine to hit a target almost every time. That's the SBU-54, which adds infrared homing to the SBU-38, allowing Ukraine's hammers to home in on any target that emits heat. Ukraine can even store reference images in the hammer bomb to ensure that infrared homing focuses on a specific target. This variation has a CEP of 3.3 feet. Given that dumb bombs often easily weigh several hundred pounds, that's more than accurate enough to practically guarantee a direct hit on an intended target. The third guidance kit variation is the SBU-64, which switches the infrared homing for a laser guidance system that makes it even more accurate against moving targets. That version also has a CEP of 3.3 feet, and it's ideal for more dynamic and fast-moving wartime environments. No matter how Ukraine wants to use the AASM HAMMER, there's a version of the guidance kit that France can provide. Beyond all of that, the hammer comes in various weight configurations, allowing it to be strapped to bombs ranging in size from 275 to 2,204 pounds. Plus, the rocket-assisted propulsion system fitted at the rear of the hammer kit gives it a range of 43 miles. Think about what that means for Ukraine's aerial platforms. With a dumb bomb, they have to be right over a target before they can have any chance of scoring a direct hit. That places Ukraine's fighter jets at massive risk of being taken out by Russia's aerial defenses. Being able to launch a bomb from 43 miles away reduces that risk massively. The Ukrainian jet can be well out of range by the time the AASM HAMMER touches down, making the weapon even more lethal to Russia's command posts. And speaking of fighter jets, that leads to another reason the AASM HAMMER is so effective. It can be fired from multiple platforms that Ukraine has in its arsenal. The F-16 is the most obvious one. The Kyiv Post says that France began work on integrating the AASM HAMMER into the F-16 in May 2024, several months before Ukraine received its first batch of the US-made fighter jets from its European partners. Fast forward to today, and Ukraine has received several batches of F-16s, with the war zone stating that 85 operational F-16s have been promised to the country. That's on top of non-operational flight platforms the US intends to pull from its boneyards for Ukraine to strip for parts. There are also French-made Mirage fighter jets arriving in Ukraine. The first batch of Mirage 5s arrived in Ukraine in February, according to CNN, with Bulgarian military adding that France has reaffirmed a previous commitment to send even more Mirage fighter jets soon. Technology.org says that France has already configured these jets to ensure they're compatible with the AASM hammers Ukraine already has. But when it comes to compatibility, the question from earlier in the video needs to be revisited. How did Ukraine manage to fire an AASM HAMMER from a MiG-29 during its strikes in Zaporizhzhia? The Aviationist provided the answer in an August 2024 article in which it reported on the first close-up photograph of the AASM HAMMER loaded onto a MiG-29. It was already known that Ukraine's Soviet-era fighter was using the weapon. Now the method is clear. The photograph shows the hammer being carried on a MiG-29's left wing via a customized pylon created to fit in the carriage under the wing. The forwardmost point of that pylon has a GPS antenna, much like that seen on the pylon used for the similar US-made JDAMer. Defense Express offers even more details. It says that the AASM HAMMER is likely made compatible with the MiG-29's electronic systems in a similar way to American AGM-88 HARM missiles. Namely, the missile electronics are connected to an iPad that hosts special software designed to overcome the electronic incompatibility seen between the missile and the aircraft. Ukraine's MiG-29s are likely using a similar technology for the hammer. And it's not just the MiGs. Defense Express also says that Ukraine is now capable of firing the AASM HAMMER from its Su-25 and Su-27 fighter jets, both of which are also relics of the Soviet era. The situation now involves Ukraine and its Western partners collaborating not only to acquire aerial platforms capable of firing the hammer, but also to adapt the older platforms in Ukraine's arsenal so they can fire it too. All of this is terrible news for Putin. He'd hope he could take advantage of Ukraine's lack of aerial firepower to continue launching missiles and glide bombs from bases behind the front lines. Now that strategy is out of the window. Ukraine finally has an effective air force, and with the AASM HAMMER, it also has a weapon it can use to establish pockets of aerial supremacy and hit Russian command posts hard. All of which leads to what this means for Russia. For a start, Ukraine taking out so many commanders with the AASM HAMMER shows that it's turning the tables on Russia in the glide bomb war. Glide bombs have been one of the most effective weapons in Putin's arsenal for much of his invasion. According to the BBC and other sources, Russia is able to create one of these bombs using one of its Soviet-era Fab bombs, which can weigh over a ton, and a special glide kit it builds for between $20,000 and $30,000. That's exactly what Russia has been doing. A lot. The Ukrainian Air Force says that Russia had used 51,000 glide bombs by January 9, 2025, claims Reuters. Around 40,000 of those glide bombs were launched at Ukraine in 2024 alone, creating a monthly volume of 3,333 and a daily rate fire of around 109 glide bombs. Ukraine can't come close to matching Russia when it comes to sheer numbers in the glide bomb battle. But with the AASM HAMMER, it has a far more effective weapon on its hands. Russia's wing kits only feature basic satellite navigation and fold-out wings. That's still a notable upgrade to the dumb bombs Russia was previously launching, but it comes with some problems. Satellite navigation is prone to electronic jamming and isn't precise enough to allow Russia to take out specific targets with certainty. That's why Russia has primarily launched glide bombs in high numbers at Ukraine's cities and defensive positions. Any hit in those locations is good for Putin. With the HAMMER, Ukraine has a glide bomb that is almost as accurate as a precision missile. That's what's allowing it to take out so many Russian commanders with such brutal efficiency. Ukraine can pick a target, know that it's extremely likely to hit that target when using the HAMMER. Russia can't do the same with its glide bombs. Then there's what Ukraine is hitting with its AASM HAMMERs to think about. Recall earlier in the video, and note that several of the Russian command posts and drone facilities Ukraine targeted were located close to Sumy. There are also several mentions of a summer offensive Russia is planning for Ukraine's northeastern border oblast. If Putin has his way, that offensive will gain a lot of ground for Russia. By the end of May, the Kyiv Independent was reporting that Russia had amassed 50,000 troops near Sumy to support this offensive. It's also been gaining some ground. By June 14, the same outlet was reporting that Russia had sped up this offensive significantly to the point where it's taken several villages and its soldiers were now within 12.4 miles of Sumy city. Euromaidan Press also says that around 60 border region settlements have been abandoned in recent weeks, with Ukraine evacuating more than 400 people from those locations to ensure they're not caught up in Putin's most recent offensive. All of this information is bad news for Ukraine, of course, but it also lends context to what Ukraine is using the AASM HAMMER to do in and around Sumy. Every successful strike against a Russian command post takes out commanders who are supposed to be organizing Russia's ground offensives in northeastern Ukraine. With those commanders gone, Russia's assaults become less coordinated, which makes them easier to repel. Putin also has to shift valuable human resources by sending new commanders to replace those Ukraine takes out with its hammers. The strikes against drone operator points near Sumy are also vital because they remove a key weapon from the battlefield, short-range kamikaze and reconnaissance drones Russia can use to coordinate and execute its assaults. That's why Putin is so terrified of the HAMMER. Ukraine now has an air force that features multiple fighter jets capable of launching the French-made weapon. It also has a commitment from France that it'll receive more hammers to the tune of 50 per month. And perhaps more, as was noted earlier. As Putin continues his push into Sumy, Ukraine is likely to intensify its AASM HAMMER strikes as a result. Will that be enough to stop the Sumy offensive in its tracks? Perhaps not, but Ukraine can certainly use its hammers to slow that offensive down to the point where Putin can't use the snatching up of lots of Ukrainian territory as leverage in future peace discussions. That alone makes the AASM HAMMER a valuable weapon in Ukraine's aerial arsenal, and Russia is going to continue feeling its full force drop on it throughout 2025. And to make things even worse, what's happening between Israel and Iran right now has just shown Putin that Russia's aerial defenses aren't up to the job of stopping the HAMMER or any other advanced weapons Ukraine fires from its fighter jets. Check out our video to discover how Iran's air defense failed during Operation Rising Lion and what that means for the future of Russia's aerial defenses. And if you like this video, please subscribe to the Military Show for more commentaries covering the latest developments in the Ukraine war.